Hi, I'm Ellie, and welcome to Susty Talks. Today, I am talking about how Shein wants you to believe that they're not a fast fashion brand, even though they are a piece of trash. Okay, so if you're new to Susty Talks, it is a community-centered podcast that aims to have genuine conversations around ethical fashion, sustainable change, and intersectional solutions. And I really do hope it becomes an online space that drives positive change and empowers action just to make sustainability more accessible and relevant for everyone. And this is a self-funded initiative. I rehome vintage clothing through my Depop and my eBay. So if you want to support me, the links will be in my description, and hopefully you find something super cute. I really do try. And then I also craft Mexican artisanal denim collections. Those are actively in the works, so look forward to that. But today I want to talk about the one and only Shein. I'm sure you've heard of the issues around this brand, and they're so problematic. Like, no matter where I go, I hear the weirdest things about this brand and how they're trying to cover up all of these like overproduction practices, and they swear they're trying to do better, but like at the end of the day, it's just so crazy how they continue to do the most random, most cruel things to the most innocent. And I do want to state, I hate fast fashion with my entire gut system, the guttural system. But you know who hates fast fashion more than me? Shein. Yeah, they hate fast fashion more than me, okay? And you know why? Because they are actively trying to distance themselves from being known as fast fashion. I don't know if you've heard, but basically France recently was like, we no longer want fast fashion in our country. And they essentially are doing this to bring local production back into their country. Because if you know anything about how fast fashion works, usually it's outsourcing fashion labor to like the global south, like Bangladesh and, you know, vulnerable communities, so they can like sew for 12 to 14 hours a day. It's crazy works. It's been reported that they just literally work the entire day because they got harassing managers and they're forced to stay there, and because they're poor, they just continue to work throughout the night. So France was like, no, we are no longer having this. We want our fashion production back. Now they're like, okay, like we want to make sure our local citizens can have a local job in fashion, which I respect, even though a lot of the initiatives for this has come from the far right within France's politics, but like that's a whole other conversation to have. But the point is, they're no longer allowing fast fashion ads like Shein to be in France, and they're not allowing these brands in general to be in their country. So, you know what Shein goes out and says? Yeah, guys, we're actually not the problem. Like, we're actually not fast fashion, even though France actively said we specifically do not want Shein in Temu. And then the head of Shein, has publicly been going to interviews, to PR campaigns, to anything he can get his little face on. His name is also Donald. I don't know what's going on with the Donalds right now, but Donalds are messing things up. He's like the head. He's like the one in charge, and he's telling everyone, guys, we're actually an on-demand brand. We're not fast fashion. Like, brother, who are you kidding me? And that's why I'm kind of like pissed. No, I'm not kind of pissed. I'm like annoyed, because like, how are they just blatantly lying to us like this? Like, who are you kidding, mister? Who are you kidding? Like, you're Shein. You are synonymous. I'm using my big words. You are synonymous to $5 tops, to cheap items that are ending up in our landfills, that are destroying our thrift stores. How are you not fast fashion? But they're really trying to clean up their image. They're changing the literal words of how they function, so they don't seem to be the villain. They don't want to be the villain. No one wants to be the villain, which I totally understand. But in this case, dude, you're kind of the villain. You know, like, I studied fashion. I wanted to work in the fashion industry, but then I quickly realized the industry is massively exploitative and it's unethical at its core. And when you have major brands on top, they're the ones that are perpetuating the system, and they're continuing to profit from all these issues. So no matter what you end up calling yourself, you're still in the fast fashion industry, you know? But I do want to say that them saying we're not a fast fashion brand is kind of a good thing. Hear me out. I'm contradicting myself, but if Shein is saying we're not fast fashion, it can be a good thing because it's normalizing the word fast fashion. They are actively saying we are aware of the term fast fashion. We are aware of the issues in the industry, and we are aware that that's a bad thing. That, my people, is major. Like, that is a win. It's a victory. They're using the terminologies that we've been using for so long to describe the issues and the miseries in the industry. But now these brands like Shein are like, no, we don't identify. We don't got anything to do with this, brother. But for me, I do think this narrative work will continue to make me work to understand better what they're actually doing and how to hold them accountable. Because if they're saying we're an on-demand fashion business, okay, like, show me the data. Show me how you're making your brand more efficient. Because they're saying, oh, we only produce what is ordered. We don't overproduce. We don't do excess. Brother, you're like producing 6,000 new styles every day. That's inherently unsustainable, even if you call yourself an on-demand fashion brand. Also, there is this distinguish between on-demand and on-demand business. Just because something is in demand doesn't mean everyone is creating something from it. You know what I mean? Like, I can have a huge demand from people to make a lot of videos. I don't have the capacity. I have like maybe 5 hours a week to make a podcast episode. Like, I don't have a lot of time. But like with brands like Shein, they can have the demand, right, from consumers, but they also have the capacity to make the items because of their like factory and their whole business model. So they can push out these quote unquote demands. But I feel like they're the ones creating the demand. Like, they're the ones creating the collections. They're the ones bogging us down with millions of ads and millions of discounts. Have you seen their website? It's like playing a video game. Like, 5 pop-ups come up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just wanted to look at their shirts. You get a spinny wheel. You get a pop-up of like, oh, you can get 10% off if you click on this and buy it in 10 minutes. I'm like, whoa. And then I click off and then another one comes up and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm trying to focus here. Like, I didn't ask for you to like make my ADHD worse. Like, can I focus? Can I focus on looking? But I do think that they try to cover up their insidious, like, gamified website and their like overproduction by saying, oh, where's database? You know, we're focused on efficiency. We're focused on organization because efficiency means data, and data means reason, and reason means sound of mind and sound of business. Like, okay, like, but at the same time, we have to scrutinize them. We have to understand the truth behind their brand, but it's notoriously hard to know what's happening in the fashion industry, especially with a fast fashion brand. We have no clue where they're making their clothing. They subcontract the heck out of their clothing. And if you don't know what subcontracting is, it's when they go to a middleman and they're like, hey sir, can you find us a factory that has the cheapest price, and then they make it, and then once they're done, you bring it back to us. And you know why they do that? They don't want to take no responsibility, and they want the cheapest labor. And if something goes wrong, they're like, not my problem. We just talked to the middleman. We didn't know what the middleman was about to do. We didn't have any control who he chose. Huh? But you actively went to the middleman. You know what I mean? So it's just all this like insidious loop of trying to not hold themselves accountable to what's happening. And their narrative work, their messaging, their branding is just part of that like insidiousness of like, no, there's nothing wrong. We swear there's nothing wrong here. Even though they're actively uploading thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces where it's literally destroying thrift stores. don't even know how we're gonna like actually thrift in like 10 or 20 years, because everything is going to be cheap polyester based Shein items. And it's already happening. I recently saw a YouTube video by this really cool creator. I will link it down below. She went to a thrift store, man. It took her like a minute to find a Shein item, and it was the ugliest thing we've ever seen. It's not creating quality items, just like very trendy, random things that is for the moment. And I get consumers want to buy it. Like, we want to be accepted. We want the beautiful item that everyone else is wearing. But then it falls apart and we're like, dang, that was not as cute as I thought it would be. And the sizing too. The sizing is so weird. I once bought, like 2 years ago, a Shein dress for my birthday because I was in the middle of nowhere. I used to live in Montana. I don't even know why I was there. And like... the mall was so bad. It was so bad. It's so cringeworthy to think about it. But I had no options. No options. Even though I worked in a thrift store, there was nothing good, man. Like, it's just Western cowboy vibes out there. And it was not my vibe. So I didn't have a lot of options. And I went to Shein. I was broke. I was young. And I wanted something for one day. And I found a beautiful dress. But it was full of, like, glitter. By design, but after I washed it, where was the glitter at? It was not even sequins. It was just like placed glitter inside of a mesh fabric. I don't even know how they did that, but it fell apart after that night, and the fabric was so plasticky and made me sweat. So sometimes people just buy things for one wear. I get it. Like, consumers just need something fast and cheap, especially within this economy. And I will never blame the consumer. The consumers are not at fault here. When it is the brand making these items, they're the ones pushing this demand. They're just convincing us, hey, you need this. We swear if you buy within the 10 minutes that we give you, you will love this. So I genuinely feel like Shein is fast fashion, but on steroids. Ultra fast fashion, super fast fashion. And there has been a lot of journalists and a lot of human rights organizations that have taken up the fight, the time that we consumers don't have to investigate Shein, to expose their labor violations. And so I'll link those down in the description if you have time to look at that. But literally, workers are working like 8+ hours every day, maybe 11, 12, 13 hours. Crazy hours. Like, can you imagine being at work for like 12 hours? You wake up, go to work, you sleep, you could wake up, go to work, you sleep, you wake up, you go to work, like, what? No, I would never. And a lot of people do work in these garment factories, or aka sweatshops, because out of a need, you know, they're trying to survive. They're trying to survive. I get that. There was also this YouTube video I saw of this lady in China who like did a vlog style of like the factory and fashion industry where she lived, and it was so illuminating. Like, these people are grinding. If you want a visual representation of the fashion industry in China through a human lens, like, that video was so eye-opening. And they just suffer, man. It's like hard to survive. They're literally trapped in poverty and just making sense and getting little to no breaks at their work. But when you say you're an on-demand production model, it's almost like they're distancing themselves from the reality of what they're producing. They're saying garment factory exploitation, that's not us. Contaminating the waterways, that's not us. And it's easy to do that, you know? It's easy when you're not directly there drinking the contaminated water, when you're not directly like working 12 to 13 hours as an executive, and be like, we're actually being very efficient in doing something that people want. You start to dismiss the issues, even though you're actively aware of them, you know? And that, I can't get over that. Like, how are you prioritizing money, like profit over people? Like, you're not reinventing the industry by saying you're an on-demand brand. You're just accelerating the harm and covering up the harm and excusing the harm. And if you pretend there's no such thing as fast fashion within your model, then how are you going to get solutions? And they can be like, oh, we have recycling programs, we have take back systems. But like, how do we even know what you're doing with the items? Like in Mexico, for example, they have a lot of pop-ups, Mexican stores. because they're trying to target low-income Mexican consumers right now. They're like, yeah, just bring all your old clothing, we'll collect it, and we'll do great stuff with it. Doesn't matter what brand it is. And people will be bringing it back. They're like, la, Shein is going to do amazing things with it. How do we know? How do we know where they're going to take those clothing? Because most of the times when we donate to the thrift store, that thrift store cannot handle all the donations, where they actively then sell it to a textile company that then sells it to another company that transport it to the global south. And that's how we end up with like textile landfills in Chile and Ghana. And because it receives so much of it, they just end up burning it because they don't want it. It's like very low quality shirts that are dirty, musty, not washed. Like who wants that stuff? No one. Literally no one. And I don't know if anyone remembers about that like influencer factory tour that Shein had like a couple years ago. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. But they invited these like fashion influencers to look at how their factory functioned, and they got a tour and they could vlog it and they could take pictures, and it was a whole PR thing. That factory, when I looked at the video, looks so clean. It looks so clean. I don't even know how they got that factory so clean. It was shining, brother. And I was like, this is not how they produce their clothing across the world. That factory was a PR factory. That's what it was. It was all just for show. It's for cameras. It's like a studio. Your studio's pretty. It's nice. It has good lighting. It's clean. Then you turn off the cameras. You see the reality of the mess behind the camera. That's what happened. And I feel like Shein has and will always be working overtime to present realities that are not 100% the truth. Because yes, maybe that was one of their factories, but I don't think it's the entire reality of the entire production of their clothing. I mean, it would be great if they hired everyone in those clean factories and gave them a good wage, and it was only 7-8 hours a day with good pay, with meals and like a break. You know, that would be great. I wouldn't be trashing on Shein. But it's not the truth. It's not the truth. Instead, they're saying we're data reasoned, we love algorithms, but that doesn't mean they're inherently good for the planet. That doesn't mean you're paying your workers. That doesn't mean you got good factories. Okay, you can be data driven, but sometimes that just means you're creating more stuff because you know consumer behavior, because we just love to fit in. It's kind of a thing. We just love to wear trends right now. But again, it's not the consumer's fault. I just feel like they're unjustly using their data. They could be doing so much good with all the money they're doing. They can transform the fashion supply chain. They can transform the industry. They can create so many good jobs for so many people that desperately need the money. And they're actively not doing this. Instead, they're pushing fast fashion faster than ever before. Again, creating 6,000 new styles daily. Like, who needs that much styles? Like, we have enough clothing to clothe the next 6 generations, brother. Like, this is the opposite of thoughtful, low-waste production. And when you make more garments, you use more water. And it's usually from synthetic fabric, so it's more dependent on the fossil fuel industry. But because it's so plastic-based, it's creating microplastics, which pollutes the ocean. It gets worse and worse, the landfill waste. And we just end up having way too much stuff in our closet. And then we're wasting our money. And then things are just getting, like, too much for us sometimes, and we get lost in our identity. We're like, who am I as you're surrounded by all these clothing? It's a wreck. It's a wreck. It's like Titanic sinking. That's the fashion industry. And just because you call yourself an on-demand business doesn't make it a solution. And it will not and cannot change anything if you're not willing to look at the reality. Also, wait, I do want to talk about like how they're like literally psychologically engineering us to want fast fashion. Like, they've kind of normalized this practice. They've normalized just like getting away with producing so much. A lot of people are not questioning it. Like, have you seen the Shein hauls? Oh my gosh, people would just be buying stuff. But like, when's the last time you've heard of like labor standards? I mean, that's kind of a boring topic, I get it. But like, labor standards, man, in the fashion industry, like, we need them to make sure brands are being transparent about their practices, that they're meeting basic things like factory cleanliness, that they're, you know, disclosing wages so we know that they're actually paying their workers right. Having verified audits, you know, that's important. Even if we're like a fashion lover of style and magic, we do need factory audits if you want to have that be from an ethical source or from a sustainable source. I think that factory audits are something I really do want to see standardized across the entire world. That is my fashion dreams. I'm a fashion girly. Please, some factory audits. And if you're unfamiliar, it's basically when people go to like the factory and verify it has good conditions and like everything is okay, you know? But a lot of times the brands who do these audits pay the auditors, so they control what happens. It's almost like when you pay someone to come to your house to investigate it or criticize it, but like if the person's being paid by you, what's going to be the outcome? It's probably going to be a positive outcome. They're not going to be like, you suck. Like, they're not going to get their check, obviously. It's like the same thing with brands. If the brands are paying for the audit, most likely they're going to get a good report back. You know, people kind of want to check. So that is something desperately needed to be fixed. We need surprise audits so we can get a whole big picture of what's actually going on inside a brand. It's like common sense. We just want to know what's going on. We want the tea, quite literally, you know? So at the end of the day, Shein is so vicious, and I just need to get this out of my system and to remind anyone that cares, like, they're literally targeting poor local consumers to buy and buy and buy, and it can actually end up making us go into debt trying to keep up. And even if we are budget conscious, how will we ever save our money when the trend that we just bought is out of style within the next 2 weeks? Like, it's just an endless loop. It's a vicious loop. So I personally feel very overwhelmed about the issues they're perpetuating and overwhelmed about the thousands of items they're creating. Like, how do we need all this stuff? I'm gonna feel so mad. I can already predict it. When I go to a thrift store in 10 years and all I see is Shein, that's gonna piss me off. But at the end of the day, those that need to hold responsibility and accountability are brands and governments. I shout out France for like actually being like, yo, fast fashion needs to stop right now. It needs to just stop for a second so that we can get our local fashion industry back on. And like Trump is kind of following the similar lines of like, oh, we need the local fashion industry, but he's actively like deporting our garment workers, which kind of makes no sense, brother. But I'm just saying, if we have more governments and more brands that are like working together to create a sustainable, like, good production system, that'd be great. That'd be great. We'll always need clothing, obviously. We don't need new clothing if we have enough clothing to clothe the next generations. But you know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to get at? Like, fast fashion is evolving, like, linguistically. It's becoming more intellectualized, you can say. It's being reworded, reframed as something quite different. And it's making it more complicated and confusing for us, the normal, everyday person, trying to understand what the heck is going on. So if they continue to use quote-unquote on-demand or quote-unquote conscious or quote-unquote circular, it can start to feel a bit greenwashy, but it hides what's really happening and can sell us unsustainable behavior under a softer image. It sells us exploitation without us being aware that it's exploitation, because when you say, oh, it's a conscious collection, you're not assuming over here that it was made at the expense of people on the planet, you know. You're just kind of like, oh, they did this in a good way, you know what, trust it. Guys, don't trust Shein. Yeah, I just want good clothing, man. That's the point of this rant. I just want good clothing. I want things that will last for years, that will be loved by my children and my great-grandchildren, where we don't constantly have to spend our money to keep up. I don't want fashion to just be a trap, because that's certainly what it is. It's just making us fit into a mold, and then like we have to toss it to keep fitting in. And I don't know, it's just the sizing of it just makes it more complicated, and then you start to feel bad about your body and you're questioning everything about yourself. Shein overall is such a horrible brand for the planet, mentally, spiritually, everything, bro. It gets a F+. So I do think we need to take example of France and note how Shein is reacting, because I think a lot of other brands will react the same way once they get toppled from a country or from access to somewhere. And I think they're going to resort to lies and they're going to try to get away from their problems. So we do need them laws, policies, accountability, action to really get them to care and to do the right thing. So just needed to get this out of my system. Hopefully it made a bit of sense. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. And until the next time, peace and love, Ellie. Bye. Don't be the villain.